All right, so we're here driving the 2001 Pontiac Firebird WS6 in the spirit of human endeavor. Blah. A car like this had a whole lot of competitors at the time. Whoa. Yeah, so there's a lot we have to look up about.
It's 2001, and here comes a hog-nosed snake ready to take out pedestrians' kneecaps, because this car predates pedestrian safety before the front of cars had to be built like rolled-up tumbling mats to cushion the impact from people crossing a state highway with all holes filled with EDM and Mass Effect porn. The Trans Am WS6 predates the iPod, apologizing to Miss Jackson, proclaiming the month of May's arrival, and the female orgasm generator that is Matchbox 20's If You're Gone. This is not a multi-role fighter. The Trans Am WS6 is made to do one thing: make you feel good. And you can win this excuse to act like an uncle who just won the Cash 5 and also just learned what Viagra does. Click the link in the description, whynotyogear.com, buy a mug, digital download, and get entered to win this WS6. Someone's going to win this. Also only has like 81,000 miles on it, and it's completely stock. Apart from the exhaust, of course. Even has the original wheels. They didn't put some dumb early 2000s big, foos knockoff things on it. These giveaways run a week and a half, so click the link in the description, buy a mug, digital download at whynotyogear.com, and someone's gonna go home with this future classic. 2001 was the penultimate model of the Trans Am. It only stuck around for one more year in 2002, and then all the Firebirds were gone.
Ever get your dick sucked while your landlord watches?
Well, you can learn all about that. And get hard at
Whynotyogear.com.
And win the only car that turns your balls into cum tankers. Pontiacs themselves hung on for another 8 or 9 years after this. The last Pontiac to be built was a 2010 Pontiac G6 sedan. This brand just fizzled out, didn't it? Right? Why couldn't this, the WS6, been the last Pontiac? I mean, I get it. Okay, the WS6. It's the Corvette engine, 5.7-liter LS, LS1, sure, cathedral ports, I know, not square intake ports, but as Matt Happel says, the intake port shape doesn't make a noticeable difference, even under forced induction. But GM intentionally nerfed the Trans Am LS, giving it only 325 horsepower and only 350 pound-feet of torque. That's plenty. Of course, it's all tunable. The whole point of owning the top-tier Trans Am, this WS6, is that you can, with a little bit of HB tuners on it, maybe a little Spark Advance, maybe a little AFR, and suddenly you're gapping C5 Corvettes. What's up now, Grandpa? Yes, it's the Corvette engine, people like to say. But in my mind, an LS is an LS and is an LS, and it sits beyond whatever car it is. I mean, what sort of engine can you say that outlives the car? Maybe a 2JZ? Maybe a 3S GTE? Maybe a Tesla motor package?
The Iron Duke?
Yeah, the Iron Duke. So this is their ram air thing. The whole deal with these nostrils right here. Yes, they're functional. Kind of. Because this thing has to be going like a $120 for these things to do anything. And they're not a straight shot into the engine. Now, yes, this is your air intake right here. This is where it breathes. There's my... Someone has a K&N in this. As if it does anything. Previous owner, what do you got? Yep, I was doing it wrong. What you're supposed to do, you're supposed to take the filter out, then take the little carrier out,
put the filter in the carrier, put the filter in the carrier, then lift up the cover, insert the entire contraption in, and there it, look at that. This is why no K&N. This is why K&Ns are redunculous. Yes, they stay clean, kind of, oil and stuff like that. What were we talking about? Ram air, yes. Air comes in here, but there's a dam immediately. It doesn't go straight in. It comes down, out the back here, and then goes in the bottom, up through the air cleaner, and then in through your throttle bottom. But what impresses me more than this sort of, oh, it's like a supercharger, and like all the old men would say that. I suppose in some very limited way if you had this thing on a track, and then it really would go that fast. However, the amazing thing is how far back the LS engine sits. Here's your strut towers. So here's where your front wheels are. Here's the middle of the wheels where the hubs are. And it just lines up with cylinder, whatever, the front two banks of cylinders. Like the one there and the one there. The majority of the 5.7 LS is back here behind the windshield. It's so close to you, most of the engine, most of the weight is behind the front wheels. So you could say it's a front mid-engine car. And they were doing all this in 2001. And yes, the Corvette is the same thing, but this is its dirty uncle, and the same technology is here. Which is why I tend to be driving this thing like a dickhead, because it's cheaper than a Corvette.
I know what you're thinking. What thrills could you possibly get from an early 2000s Pontiac that you couldn't simply get from having an affair? Well, just trust me on this. No trip to the extramarital bone rodeo could possibly live up to this Firebird, no matter how long you troll along Freeway 125. This is the fourth generation model of the Firebird, the George Harrison to the Mustang's Paul and the Camaro's John. A high-performance pony that sticks around long enough to turn a few heads before disappearing in a cloud of unpaid parking tickets and open bar tabs. A Trans Am is for the man whose butt dyno is more reliable. And yet, this is a car that struggled to maintain cultural visibility, despite Smokey and the Bandit, despite Knight Rider, despite being one of the most unique cars of its time visually, so that by the time it was out of its 70s to early 80s prime, the Firebird was due for a complete refresh. Enter the fourth and final generation of the Firebird in the early 90s, looking as phallic as GM could make it without adding veins. It has a lean, prizefighter look to it, ready to spring at you with propulsive aggression. You have the ram air intake on the hood that's two flared nostrils, like a dad giving the money doesn't grow on trees speech to a kid who just maxed out his credit card on V-Bucks. It has a new camshaft for 2001, and many 2001 models got the LS6 intake from the Corvette Z06 because GM needed something that reads well in car and driver, I guess. It also has a Borg-Warner 6-speed manual transmission, which feels very nice. And the fuel economy rages in the neighborhood of 17 miles per gallon city, 25 highway, and around 21 combined. I am not sure if a Trans Am is able, even with the same engine, and pretty much the same gear ratios, is able to match a Corvette C5 as far as fuel economy. Like it or not, a Corvette C5 is lower to the ground and more streamlined, enabling the Corvette C5 to reach 30 miles per gallon on the highway. The Trans Am WS6 also featured double wishbone front suspension and a performatively angry aesthetic like a guy who discovered the gym after getting his heart broken. It radiates chaotic energy in a way you don't really get with the faux angry design of modern cars. It seems even more sinister in a used car, obtuse and sharp at the same time, like the edges of hope itself. A vibe like this is more and more rare as cars like these become more and more rare. Because let's face it, cars don't appreciate in value. Recently, Doug DeMuro tweeted about people setting reserves on cars and bids that don't understand that their cars can't fetch whatever insane value they think they're worth. Because cars don't appreciate in value like real estate. Vehicles aren't a thing you invest in. You don't invest in people either. That's a phrase people use to excuse joining cults of personality. You invest in components, and biopharma, and tech, and infrastructure. Throw a little military contractors in there. This is a stocks YouTube channel now. Here's my stock tip. HII. They're the company that has a contract to build a new USS Enterprise, our new aircraft carrier. You want big bucks for your used car? Dude, the money isn't in the sale. It's what you save having bought used in the first place, provided there wasn't a million things wrong with the car when you got it. So take the money you saved and invest it in something that justifies your decision to start living life for yourself. Because the best revenge is making a lot of money. The second best revenge is not caring. Look, my point is this. Enjoy a car for what it is, rather than what you think it'll make you on the secondhand market. How often are you going to find a car whose only purpose is enjoyment? And that's what's freeing about the WS6. It's the best Trans Am, and yet it's not a Corvette, and for that, the car is free. The only point of this car is to make you feel good. You feel good. It's not made to impress anybody else. It's not made to convince anybody else that your dick works. It's not a bragging truck. It's not made to set lap times. If I had it my way and we could still have licensed music, all I would do was just show pictures of a Trans Am driving around to Kim Mitchell's Go for Soda. This review is getting long already, isn't it? But we're traveling further and further away from 2001, a year when we left the 1990s tutorial level and into the eternal war 2000. The early 2000s, where only the heavy bass line of Mystical's bouncing back kept us rowing gears forward. God, this car looks good. How does it drive? Okay. You know what? It's controllable because the engine is That's another thing I don't tell you about Trans Ams, I don't tell you about WS6. Did I already talk about this in the On the Fly? The majority of the LS engine is behind the strut towers. It's a front mid-engine car. The majority of the LS engine is behind the front wheels. And Honda S2000s think they're all that. Is it better to look good than to be undeniably fast? Well, if the Ferrari 308 GT is any evidence, then yes. Even in its day, the Trans Am WS6 package once wasn't expensive relative to the power and fun you're getting. But is it a Maranello? No. Hell no. But now, in 2022, this car reminds you of a lucid dream that you're just about to forget as your adult responsibilities flow through the Venetian blinds of a 6:30 a.m. morning. Driving this is like rolling into a fetish party where people are wearing pup masks and husky harnesses and doing whippets in the kitchen, and you're talking on a Nokia N-Gauge that works, and you're calling your Molly dealer. The Firebird does go 0 to 60 in 5 seconds flat, and does a quarter mile in 13.5 seconds at 107.4 miles an hour. From what we could find, the average price in 2001 was about $21,154, which comes out to roughly $35,119 today in 2022. Which is really affordable considering what you're getting. You're getting an American muscle car that is also front mid-engine for under 40 grand. I think these things are still worth 20 grand today in decent condition, and this only has 81,000 miles on it. Because let's be real, if you own a Corvette tends to be something a person worries over. Everything must be remaining functional. It must always be waxed and under a car cover. It must be cosmetic perfection to the point that owning a Corvette is lost. Having a perfect car reawakens the familiar stress of being in the checkout line at the grocery store when your mom tells you she forgot something and needs to go grab it real quick. So she leaves you in line when she runs to go get it. But the minute she leaves, the line starts moving fast. And it's one of those tight checkout lines where you're boxed in and you have a row of people behind you and then another person ahead of you fumbling to rebag all the groceries because they didn't like the job the attendant did. And so you're stuck as this line just moves forward, your mom nowhere in sight, and you with no way to pay. The crushing inevitability of a potential nightmare tableau becomes a reality. But how stressed are you really going to get over a Trans Am? It's not here to impress anybody. It's not here to do anything but to bring joy into your life from the minute your palms meet the steering wheel. Because the Trans Am doesn't demand perfection of you. Like John Steinbeck said it best. And now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. Because goodness demands nothing more than what you can handle. It fills a spot in your soul that perfection is too obtuse to fill. The building blocks of a world are experiences. You build a world one experience at a time. So take the T-tops off, put them in the back, crank the engine. Classic rock will never sound quite as good. And if some of those are perfect experiences, all the better to bear the load. But you can be happy and have a full life without ever knowing perfection on an intimate level. A Pontiac Trans Am is happiness, and the WS6 package is being happy while knowing you're happy. If not sustainable, then at least attainable in the first place. This car will keep happiness warm for you as you travel the shortest distance between two joys. Embrace imperfection at whynotyogear.com. Buy a mug, digital download, and get entered to win a car that is more interesting than a Corvette. There's some lovable flaws here. Flaws that make it interesting. You become unique. And also celebrate the end of Pontiac. The greatest Pontiac of all. Someone's going to go home with this Trans Am WS6. Thanks for watching.
WS6. It's a souped-up Firebird, a Pontiac car. Why not you gear? Which Pontiac still was here? It's part of my heart.